7:05 p.m. I will call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. And I will turn the microphone over to Chair O'Donnell. Do I press? You don't need to press. You're
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. Planning Board is already in session from an earlier meeting at 6:45 that we started, so we're continuing our session up here. This meeting is a joint meeting with Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board to meet with the MAPC representatives who are helping us with our bylaw project. And Andrea and Courtney are here with us this evening, and I will turn the meeting over to them so they can make their presentation, and then after that we'll have open discussion. Thank you. Also, just to identify, since we're recording, to identify people who are on the meeting here. The three selectmen are to my right: Shelley Bradbury, Jed Lane, Peter Levasseur, Simone Early, our vice chair, and Dana Menon, who is the town planner, who's working very closely with the planning board, MAPC, on this project and is helping us with the zoning ambassador outreach program.
Great, thank you. Good evening. It's really nice to see you all in person since we didn't get to do that last time. And we're both going to be presenting, so you'll get to meet Courtney in a minute, but I'll start us off with kind of what we're going to do is review the process. So last time we caught you all up with where we were with phase 2, what we had accomplished in phase 1. Tonight, we want to kind of show you how we're going to attack this big project. We have met with the steering committee and talked about the potentials of phasing different bylaw amendments because we know we can't address everything at every meeting. So we're going to kind of walk you through the process as we see it. And then Courtney will spend some time talking about the April 12th public forum. And then we'll give a brief update on the zoning ambassadors outreach. So that's what we'd like to talk about this evening, and then would love it to be a dialogue, so feel free to stop us as we're running through the presentation, and we're happy to answer questions and hear your ideas as we go along. But it's really nice to be in front of you all tonight. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this is the agenda as I outlined it. The next slide I think is most important because we're starting to talk about the process. So we have a limited amount of time with you all, and we're trying to make the most of our time. I think we'll be meeting more frequently than we did for phase 1 for those of you who were on the planning board at that time. We really see us, kicking off things tonight and then hopefully meeting with you over the next several months. I think we'll do probably 5 planning board meetings, trying to use that time as wisely as we can. Just to give you a sense of how we'll be, setting up those planning board meetings and the discussions with the Board of Selectmen, because I do enjoy that it's both boards. I think it's really good and makes the project stronger to have both of you kind of working on this together. But as we go through this process, we'll be doing a lot of public engagement, April 12th being the first public forum. Whenever we bring you together for the project meetings, then we'll be making sure that we're sharing the public feedback that we hear. We'll also be sharing progress of some of the smaller work groups that we'll be talking about in a minute, how we're planning to attack the different bylaw amendments and the topics that you all want to prioritize. Whenever we do meet, we'll also be having potential bylaw amendment ideas for you to kind of mull over and give us your feedback on what you like and don't like so that we can continue to refine the amendments as you see fit. And then we'll also be working like we are tonight to help plan engagement events. So we want to make sure that you all are informing how we're engaging the public. So Courtney will talk about the April 12th forum, the activities that we have planned. We want to hear from you if that's going to solicit the right kind of feedback that you all need to make decisions. Next slide. So I show this because at the last meeting, and you guys have been doing a lot of work to really understand and identify what your priorities are for this project. And it's a lot, and it's a lot of topics that will take a lot of time to cover. And so I just show this list to kind of remind you that there's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about over the next several months. And so the next slide shows how we plan to take this list of various topics and kind of break it up into manageable chunks for us to work through. So at the May meeting is when we'll really start to get into more of the subject matter. We'll have feedback from the April 12th forum that we'll share with you at that time, but I think May would be a good time for us to focus on how can we codify your general zoning district. We know that that's something that in this broad recodification effort, you want to clarify what your general district is. Right now, it's kind of confusing if you're not someone who's been administering your bylaw for months and months or years. And so we want to help you to figure out how you can codify that and work it into the reorganization that Lisa has been working on. We also, at our last meeting, talked about the idea of introducing form-based code elements as a short-term measure, because we know you're not going to immediately do what the public asked during phase 1 of creating new zoning districts. That's a much longer term goal. And so we see, as you're thinking about how to codify the general zoning district, what else can we do in this more short term to address some of the things that we heard in phase 1. We also will be looking at the dimensional regulations. So you may recall that right now in your bylaw, they're kind of scattered all over. So one of the things that we heard was that it would be nice to consolidate all of those, organize it in a more traditional manner. So we may, you all may decide to make some tweaks to those regulations or consider that, so we can do that, but we'll also help with the recodification element of bringing all of those into a table that's more user-friendly and readable. And we'll do the same with the use regulations. So we heard that it would be really nice to have use regulations that are currently kind of strewn about, to bring them all into a traditional use table, perhaps. You'll see their names on the slide. And so the steering committee, and I think you all have talked about this at a past meeting. So one of the approaches is that you'll pair up and you can work with us, and we can do sort of working meetings in between these more formal meetings that we have to workshop ideas. You can give us feedback and we can have it be kind of an iterative process. So we put the assignments up here just to kind of keep everyone on the same page. And so that's what we'll focus on in May. In between meetings, we'll be going back to the public and trying to get feedback. We understand that you don't want to take all of this for adoption immediately, but we think that we can try to gather the information for you and have it so that whenever you are ready to, get it to the point of taking it to warrant and town meeting, then it'll hopefully be vetted by the community somewhat and be at a working place for you all to refine at the point when you're ready. In June, we'll tackle the new chapter 6.6, the additional regulations, and that's where the priorities of scenic roads, home occupations, and affordable housing can be discussed. And so again, at the planning board meetings, we'll just be kind of showing what you're doing today, some options that you can consider, and then looking for your feedback on which direction you may want to go. In July, we'll be focusing on development regulations. That'll be things like parking, site configuration, thinking about access and connectivity, what you already have in your bylaw, where you may want to make improvements, and then introducing landscaping, fencing, walls, and screening. I think that's another topic that you kind of have it in a few different places in your bylaw. You may want to make them more robust, so we can talk about how you might do that. And then towards the end of this kind of bylaw drafting process, we save nonconformities in administration. It's not the most exciting topics, but really important as you're going through a bylaw amendment process. And that's when we can talk about some of the more procedural things like site plan review and enforcement. So that's sort of the big picture of where we're heading and trying to pace out the discussions and the topics so that hopefully it's a more manageable process for you all and also for us as we're trying to do the research and preparing materials for you all. Maybe I'll stop there and
I just have one quick question to clarify. In use regulations, special permit categories are in that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions before we move on? So the next slide, this just kind of shows that it is a very iterative process. We don't expect that anything that we bring to you is going to be perfect the first time. We really want to make sure that we're doing our job as your consultants in this case of bringing you the options, hearing what you want in these different policy areas and regulatory buckets, and bringing you options and having this be a back and forth. So we really see each of these meetings kind of building on one another. So in May, we'll bring you some ideas for how to codify the general district. We'll get your feedback. We'll kind of go back, refine the draft. We'll probably bring it back to you at the next meeting to show what we changed, and then we'll start to talk about the new topics. So it'll be very iterative and trying to build on and make sure that you see how we're taking your feedback and incorporate it into the draft. And then, of course, as we're getting public comments and feedback on the different drafts, then we'll make sure that we're including that and letting you see how we're addressing that public feedback. As I already mentioned, the planning board pairs, I think that's a really good approach, and I think that we should probably start having some meetings where maybe in April we schedule just meetings with the different pairs to talk about the different topics, what ideas you have, what you would like us to look into if you have specific ideas. A lot of times with projects like this, it's usually helpful if you have an aspirational like community where you know they're doing site plan review really well, or they've really managed like the special permit category well. If you know of communities that you would like us to look into, then we're happy to do that. If you have communities where you don't think they're doing well, tell us that too, so that we're not like trying to see what Hamilton is doing and you just don't like what Hamilton has done with planning and zoning. I think that's important for us to know so that we can make sure that we're bringing options that fit your needs. And then maybe I'll stop there and see if there are any like burning towns that you would like us to research or not.
I think we're still on that learning curve.
That's fine. No problem. No pressure.
So I'm going to bring up one really weird thing that is, it's in the news right now because we're regionalized with Manchester, and they're considering a new zoning bylaw that regulates adult entertainment. So that's something that I guarantee you will come up in public forums. Just a heads up.
Good to know.
Ask a logistical question. If we're meeting in pairs and, you know, giving feedback, can you give like a diagrammatic outline of time period? So you give us a document, we have a week, 3 days, 2 weeks, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that we would try to give you probably at least a week. I think we know that you all have other jobs, responsibilities, things. So we wouldn't want to have a super quick turnaround. I think we also want to hear what works for you. So if you need more time, then we can build that into our process. But I think that probably a week review time is what we're usually used to. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Probably will depend on how much reading you assign us.
That's
too.
true.
Yeah, because if it's the third draft and we're just checking a couple of things,
Exactly.
that's...
Yeah, and we'll make sure as we're going through this process, we'll do track changes so that you'll clearly know what changes with different drafts, and also we'll make sure that whatever your existing language is, we'll show how that is changing, because that's really important when you get to the town meeting level to be able to show exactly what has changed, what language is being taken out or modified. So we'll try to keep really clear records, and so that if you needed to refer to different drafts, then you can do that.
I have a question more for our chair, Lisa. For our subcommittees, do you think maybe we should, in our next planning board, talk about the subcommittees and maybe what we should be looking and focusing on as a group, what we're considering, so it would give us more of a direction on individual committees?
Yeah, we just talked about the sort of setting things up, but we haven't really drilled down into that yet, so we will.
Yeah, so I would caution that the planning board probably does not want to call those groups subcommittees. If you do that, then you'll need to post the meeting, it becomes a public meeting, and you have to take minutes. Instead, I look at these as informal discussions between two board members. And, you know, I would not formalize at the planning board level any further organization than that, or you run the risk of them becoming subcommittees of the planning board,
Right.
even though there's just two people.
Right, yeah, so we never have talked about any kind of formal subcommittee, because we also...
Well, the word just came up, and I just want to make sure that we don't, it just needs to be a very informal association of two people with an interest, and at a posted planning board meeting, they can talk about their interest and what they, you know,
Exactly.
informally talked about with each other.
That's why I sort of organized it this way, so that two people could always talk, and even those two people could talk to either me or Simone, so that there could be a three-person conversation. Just we're board of
whatever
seven.
informal things happen below the quorum for the planning board is fine. I wouldn't really formalize it or talk about it or engineer it any more than that.
No, and it's intended so that two people can put their heads together, share the work, and then bring their ideas back to
And
the
then
whole
if-
board to
as long as
discuss.
their topic of interest is on the posted agenda, they can talk away, exactly.
Right, yeah. I mean,
Yep.
the point is to bring it all back to the full board at a posted meeting.
That's right.
And Andrea, my one comment about the slide that I see, it's more just kind of a common sense perspective. I don't have a specific town that we should model or avoid, but I want to make sure that we're proactively looking at communities that resemble Essex. I don't want to be comparing to Worcester or Boston. I want to make sure we're looking at a Hamilton, Wenham, or, I mean, Ipswich is a little bit bigger than us, but something that closely resembles us and not some huge city.
And that's something that we've been looking at. I think the other thing that we'll be doing is just thinking of best practices, because we do work with communities of all sizes. We'll be talking to our colleagues and seeing I don't think that we've actually worked on the Manchester project, but we've helped plenty of other communities do rezonings on different topic areas. So we'll be bringing that into the picture and trying to tell you this has worked well in this community if we have that information. This is where maybe this didn't work, or they're looking to make this refinement if we know those things.
Perfect, thank you.
That's great.
And you can also look at communities outside the MAPC region.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, we'll be looking as far as we can, but keeping in mind the local context, of course, because it would be useless to try to look at something that Boston is doing. and
Yeah,
adapt
like
it here.
Rowley, Boxford,
Yeah.
Georgetown, those communities.
Yeah, that would be great. So I think the other thing that we wanted to, if you want to go to do you want to talk to these? Or-
No, I was just gonna say to that, and so as we start organizing, as we start working on this part of phase 2, with reorganizing the bylaw, we wanted to present a few examples, and keep in mind we're not saying that these communities are similar to Essex. What we're speaking to is more about the layout, the structure, the organization of the document and the bylaw itself, not necessarily the regulations. So this first example is from Arlington. This is their zoning bylaw, and a few things that I want to point out are not only is their bylaw color coded based on section. It offers definitions with illustrative graphics to help explain and better clarify some of the more complex measurements. They also have signage details, which are shown on the graphic here. Next. This is an example of their table of dimensional regulations, which shows lot size, and I just included this to emphasize the structure and the organization of that information. So it's a lot less text, and the information is organized into a table versus being all text, which is quicker for people to reference. This example is Ipswich, and again, they have their use and dimensional regulations organized and formatted in a table, which again, it just makes it quicker to reference. The information is easier to look up, and any additional details can be included in footnotes, or you can also include live links to jump to different sections throughout the bylaw if it's an interactive PDF. So this is their use table, and looking at more details and how they have uses organized. They have the title, they have the use classification, whether it's a principal or accessory use. They have the uses categorized, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, and then the different use types. So multifamily, single family, two-family dwellings. And again, it lists horizontally the different zoning districts in the town. So it's just a easier and more clear-cut way to organize the information. So this is an example from Newton, and again, they use graphics and diagrams for some of those more complex measurements. They also note, the graphics also speak to layout, so building layout, and how much space a structure occupies the lot. It helps people better understand what we mean when we talk about setbacks and minimum lot coverage, things like that. And they have, for this particular example, they have the graphics, they have the dimensional regulations organized in a chart, and text provided to the side for people to reference. This example is from Somerville, and again, so in this example, they do color code it, but they color code things based on the specific district at the top. So it differs from that first example that I showed. They also include measurements that show building placement, setbacks, open space requirements, and their dimensional regulations. And again, that information is organized in a chart format with text characterizing some of the things in other sections of the plan. So with each zoning district within Somerville, they have these opening pages in the bylaw that provide a character description of the area. So it talks about what makes this specific area more unique. It just provides descriptions on the types of building and uses in this particular area. It provides a illustrative diagram, a purpose statement and intent for the district, and it also lists the other general information, the types of uses, the building types that are appropriate in a particular zoning district. And this, we feel, is a good approach to talking about place types or transitional areas within the town without having to create those hardline zoning districts. This allows for more flexibility than traditional zoning districts.
So you're calling that place types?
Yes, so each different areas throughout the town will have a descriptor that talks about, it talks about form, it talks about the types of buildings located in the area. It would talk about whether these lots are located along a scenic route or located in a more historic, in the historic core or a more historic area. It would add things like, it would have certain descriptors about the types of architecture, whether it was like a Cape Cod bungalow versus a more traditional two-story or single-family home. And we think this would help better inform, it would help to describe what's existing and also help guide any future development, so that people had a better sense of what you mean when you use words like community character or small town feel. It starts to bring all of those less physical descriptors into a descriptive text.
And so would that be, does that format allow to not have a line and instead have it an open, spreading of, if this use is growing there, it's okay, as opposed to like the district line, yeah.
Yes, that's the approach.
It's actually pretty similar to what you have today, because right now you have residential business. Like, you kind of already have those place types, but you haven't really done the description to really tell someone, if you're doing a business, this is what's expected. It's just like more black and white in your ordinance or bylaw today. And so this will kind of build on that and allow for more, like Courtney said, like description and like an idea, so that you know what you're getting whenever a business comes in. The bylaw can further expand on that,
Yeah.
but still within your general district. So this is not going to carve out different commercial areas or residential, because that's not what you have, and that's harder to get to that point. So this is a way to do some like better shaping of what can occur on properties today, but not go the full blown zoning district approach.
So you're thinking about, with the 3 districts that we have, like you would start doing descriptions like this, and then eventually, if we do get to zoning districts, then you would start wherever residential districts or business. But would you, what you're saying is we could start with our 3 districts right now that we have.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
It provides you with flexibility and more of a interim step.
Okay.
Well, it's a different way of thinking about zoning, right? It's more progressive and allowing for other things to happen than what we write a line by, right?
Right. Next slide. And in this example, this is just speaking to the definition. So again, helping people to really understand what you mean when you talk about a half story, or when you're talking about measurements for basements or a roof line. It just brings greater clarity. And of course, I know we're working within a specific budget, but this is just to start to help this group generate ideas of things that you may like to see included as we start to build the new bylaw, as we start to build and restructure the new bylaw. And just for reference, so we do kind of have a homework assignment for you guys. If you visit this site, it lists all of the zoning ordinances and bylaws for every community and across the state. So as we start to get into specific topic areas, we may have you pair up. And so if your topic is special permit, we may say pick 6 communities, you take 3, your partner takes 3, go through those 3 communities, zoning ordinance or bylaws, pick out things within that specific section that you like, and bring that information back to us so that we do a better job at crafting a bylaw that works for the town. Okay. And so with that being said, I want to, first of all, just want to pause to see if there's any questions about that. If not, we can start to talk a little bit about the community forum. And for that, I thought it would be helpful to for everybody to have their physical copies of the outline of the agenda.
They're in front of you, Ruth, if you want to hand those out.
You can go to the next slide. So I want to start talking about our approach to doing the work. So phase one was all about reviewing the existing zoning bylaw, looking, doing a comprehensive review, and then producing the zoning audit and the diagnostic report. As we transition to the second phase, we'll be looking at recodification and really developing a shared community vision for the community. And in this second phase, we would be looking to do, we would be reorganizing, reformatting, updating, and aligning the bylaw with the community's shared vision. This would take us up to annual town meeting in May, and so that's all phase two would entail. And then following the adoption or the vote for the recodified zoning bylaw, then we would start to transition into phase three, which is all about bylaw development. So modifying and amending the bylaw based on feedback that we've gathered from our first public forum, as well as the list of priorities that the planning board provided. So of course we would, one of the things that we would show and really emphasize in that first public forum is expressing that we would start to talk about why we're doing the recodification, what it actually means, and kind of framing it as a spring cleaning or a tidying of the existing zoning bylaw. We would talk and really emphasize that the recodification process was really about reorganizing what's already there. So renumbering, labeling, and having a consistent format. And also stress that the recodified bylaw would only consist of existing text. So it wouldn't be any changes to the content. It would just be reorganizing it in a more concise and straightforward manner that made a lot of the information easier for people to find as they move through. And of course, we would provide handouts to participants of the forum that showed the red line changes, as well as a clean version of the proposed changes to the bylaw. As far as the presentation, we would talk about why now, like why we're doing it, and frame it and let people know up front that the town is looking to bring this to town meeting, and that, again, emphasizing this is just reorganization, no major changes outside of that. And the other part of that would be looking to build a community vision. The town hasn't done a master plan, a recent master plan, so it would be good to gather residents to help build a collective vision for how they envision the town and its zoning changing over time. So we're hoping to achieve this through engagement activities, both in person and virtual, through community conversations, and of course, surveying. And one of the two exercises that we've designed for the first forum is that place type exercise that I was talking about. So we would pose a prompt or a question to residents, asking them to describe places and spaces throughout the town that had a unique or identifiable character, and start to take things that that are often hard to capture, things that people say, or the experiences that people have when they're in specific spaces, and start to put words to what that actually means. So, we would ask something like, why is this place meaningful to you? Like, what makes it special? So this is an example. We would ask people to write down 3 descriptors or a short descriptive statement, and not only say it, but give it a geographical location, so that way we can start to formalize some of those place types, so that we could talk more about one of the distinctive or identifiable features of Canomo Point is Cape Cod homes, or narrow streets, but really starting to just give vocabulary to the bylaw.
How old is the current master plan, and does it cover any of this at all, so you have some starting ground?
No.
You have a community development plan from 2002, so that was a state
That's the
program.
last one, yeah.
And it's not as comprehensive as a comprehensive plan would be today.
Yeah.
But we do have feedback that we got from phase 1 that can be a starting point.
Okay.
So we have survey results and kind of descriptions that came up through that process that will be part of the activities.
Thank you.
And so, sorry,
Oh,
will
go
this exercise also incorporate, like, clearly there are places where things happen now, but any idealistic, we would really enjoy it if there was more open space in this area, or, I don't know. So will there be questions that ask what's missing as well as what's existing?
That's a really good point. And yeah, we would likely have like a separate map that would help us describe, future conditions.
Especially with encroaching water and that kind of thing,
The other exercise that we thought would be helpful, not only for the planning board, but for residents, was to have residents prioritize the list of prioritized components of the bylaw that the planning board was hoping to address, and then have people note the level of importance of that topic area, so that way the planning board has a more strategic approach to how they go about proposing new bylaws. So it would give you a sense of, like, there's strong support for changes to special permit, less support for parking, for instance, and just to gauge and get a better sense of how easily or how difficult it might be to have an amendment passed.
Hopefully that can help you pace out your warrant articles. So if everyone really cares about special permits, that should be first on the docket for the town meeting.
Just to chime in on the parking for one moment, it's an area where the town is in desperate need of parking, but we have done a parking study, and I think it's important for MAPC. I don't want to say to not waste too much time on it, but we had an $80,000 grant. We focused, so it was for a parking study, and when that information was presented, the community members that actually asked for the grant and the study to be done were the same ones that said, absolutely, we're not doing this. When we started looking at the DOT regulations from a stamped engineering drawing standpoint, and you needed to have a line of sight 20 feet on either side of a crosswalk, they lost X amount of spots. And you needed to have, 15 feet of clearance coming out any sort of a roadway. They lost another 3 spots on either side of a road. That was a non-starter. So there were a lot of issues with that. So while we all sitting at this table realize that we have parking issues, I want to make sure that it's more geared toward some of the restrictive things that we have. For instance, there's somebody that wanted to renovate, it's a barn, but they wanted to renovate a barn into a mixed-use business/apartment, and because of the parking requirements, they were not able to do so. So I want to make sure that the parking is limited to what we can do and not spread out, because I don't want to waste your resources on that. So you might want to peek at that parking study before you focus on some of those things.
And parking is an issue that's specific to the downtown district, and the rest of the town, the other 90% of the properties have driveways.
And that was just an example. That was just using it as an example, and it was based off the prioritized list. I think parking may have been one of those, one of the things listed. But it's better. I appreciate you bringing context and clarity to
Right, and parking is extremely important to the downtown district, extremely. For all of our businesses that want to be successful, they need parking for their customers. We understand that and we sympathize, but we can't park on the roofs of these buildings, so I just don't want to spend a lot of time there. That you only have the land that you have to work with.
Yeah. And we do have a copy of that parking study, so perfect. We can make sure to reference that. Any other questions before we move on to the zoning ambassadors discussion? I think maybe a couple other points for the forum, but go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, on the forum. So I just want to kind of recap what people will be hearing, and we'll talk first about the reorganization of the bylaw. And by the time the forum hits, that's going to be pretty much cast in stone. So we'll be able to hand it out and talk about it. And we're also going to be having a public hearing the week after. So this is on the 12th is the forum, and the 19th at our regular planning board meeting, we're having the required public hearing for those zoning articles, at which point we'll have an opportunity to get into that. So all I'm saying is we don't want to spend too much time on that, because that's already a done deal. The language is done, and it's just getting people used to it. And I'd rather see you spend more time learning about what people are interested in and explaining to them the scope of the project. And also, because one thing I want people to understand, and it's going to take repeating, is that you're here for a duration, and in that duration, we're going to work to rewrite everything that we want to. But we're not going to end up in November with all of that there then, and we're going to, so sort of give people that sense of this is a years-long project for the planning board. You're here to help us over the finish line of rewriting it, but then as far as implementing it, it's going to be a much more gradual process with plenty of public outreach. Even when you're not here, we'll continue to try.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that we hope that this can set up the public hearing nicely and kind of give you just another way to get the word out about it, but not solicit a lot of input, because it's a little late for that. And this is just a recodification and reorganization. But we don't want people to come to this and feel like if we don't mention it enough, then they're like, well, what's happening? So I think that it'll be hopefully just another plug for the public hearing on the 19th. And we can let people know, please go to that, so that you can have a part in that process.
Thanks.
Yeah.
There were just, I think, 2 small logistical things about the forum. So I think Andrea and I would be interested in hearing the level of participation from the group in terms of helping to staff the event, your comfort level with engaging with residents on some of the exercises. I think we had briefly discussed before refreshments or providing something to help entice people and get them here. And so we just wanted to kind of check in on those two things. Yeah.
We'll have a sign-in table, so if maybe some of you might want to like help welcome people, I think that would be good. And then once we do the presentation and break out into groups, it seems like that would be a good opportunity to kind of have us working the stations, but also have you all helping to work and explain the stations.
For me, I'll be here, and I will do whatever I'm told.
Perfect.
Thank you, Ruth. Yeah, I believe the majority of the planning board will be here. We meet first and third as our regular business meetings, and I've tried to schedule, like, this is the 4th, and the 12th is the second Wednesday. So I've tried to schedule these events on the off Wednesdays. So, I'm asking the planning board to come, but it's not obviously part of the commitment of being on the planning board. But I think most of us will be here if we can. As far as attendance goes, we're going to really do our best to get the word out. Obviously through zoning ambassadors as that starts up, but also just on social media and around town. And we'll put flyers in the bank and the post office and things like that to try and get people to come. So, it's, Brendan can tell you it's a guess on these kind of things, and if it's a bad weather, people will be like, eh. So it's really random here in Essex, honestly.
Yeah. Yep.
For each forum that we'll have for the public, will you put out a flyer?
Yep.
Okay, because that's an opportunity to be at the transfer station, and that's how we got for the survey. So we will be there.
Yeah,
with
that's
those
great.
Flyers.
Yeah, we've sent
Shelley's
the flyer.
our dump lady.
I remember the outreach you did for phase 1. We have sent to everyone who participated in phase 1, so we have all of those contact info, so we sent that to everyone, and I know you've been sort of sharing it, I think. And so please share the flyer, put it on whatever Facebooks or things that people use. I think the other question that we had was, would someone like to make opening remarks? Lisa, I don't know if you do, or Ruth, or someone to kind of like open up the forum before we do our presentation.
Ruth and I will fight that out.
Sounds good.
No, you.
And I think we'll probably get here like around 6 so that we have plenty of time to set up, and because we'll have the boards. It is a hybrid meeting, so we have the option that we're working with 1623 to make sure that it's broadcast, and so hopefully we'll get some good turnout. But you never know with these things, and I think that we can evolve, and if this format doesn't turn out a lot of people, then the next time that we're all together, we can talk about what we can do to improve that.
And so if we're doing breakout groups in the room, will we also do them online?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, so unlike tonight where we're doing the free conference call, we've been working with Brendan and 1623. We'll be doing Zoom, and so that we're just more familiar with Zoom, so we can manage we may be doing Qualtrics as like a survey tool, so we may be able to use that for people who call in. They can essentially do the same activities and give the same kinds of feedback just by clicking a link and doing the activities. So ideally, if you come in person, you'll have the same experience if you come online, but you won't get to see all of us in person. So hopefully people just want to come and see our faces.
And have refreshments, because they won't be online either.
Exactly, yeah. And our reminders will have to say, like, come get cookies. Anything else on the forum?
No, I think we'll be working on a facilitation guide to make everything as straightforward and simple as possible. So yeah.
Great. So the last thing that we wanted to talk about was you all have been doing a lot of outreach to try to get zoning ambassadors. Some of you have volunteered, so thank you. So we wanted to give an update. So we had set up a form that you all probably saw to put it out there for anyone who was interested. We asked for contact information, the level that people wanted to be involved. So with this program, we want to do a work session to kick things off to really go over what community engagement is, the different types of ways that you can engage people, and then really set the groundwork for understanding like who are the stakeholders, who are the community groups that we can kind of funnel things through different networks to reach as many different types of people and groups in town. And then that's like the full-fledged zoning ambassador program, but we also recognize some people may just want to help like push a flyer out or send an email to their friends. So we wanted to see how different people would want to be involved. Most everyone that signed up through the form wants to do the full-blown join a work session and then help, which is really great. So now we have 12 people. I've put their names up. These are just the folks who filled out the form. Again, thank you to those of you who have. And so the next step will be scheduling that introductory work session to go over the little graphic at the bottom here shows the different kinds of community engagement. It's the spectrum of, you know, you can either just inform people, you can be a more collaborative engagement event, you can, you know, do different kinds of engagement. So we want to make sure that we are thinking strategically about at different points in the process. Maybe it makes sense to do just informing, letting people know where we are, versus maybe it's a work session where we want to gather a lot of feedback and workshop a lot with residents. So the next step is if there are any others that you think should be on the list that you want to maybe bug to try to like get them to volunteer to be a zoning ambassador, I would suggest doing that sooner rather than later so that we can try to schedule the work session. In the form, we asked when people most wanted to attend, and it looked like weekday evenings was the most preferred. So we'll look at the calendar, send some optional dates to you all, and then we'll get that scheduled, and hopefully we'd like to do that in person. I think it'll be better if it's an in-person event. We would like to do it at town hall, probably would be the most convenient for folks. But we'll send the presentation and the agenda to the steering committee ahead of time, and you can share that with the full group. But it'll be really an opportunity for us to just connect with people and kind of vet the community engagement for this project. And I think it'll actually work out nicely that we may have this work session after the first forum, so we can kind of look and see like, we did one event, what went well, what didn't, how can we tweak this so that all of the subsequent things that we do can be reaching the max amount of people.
So the last half of April, you're thinking?
I think so. I think
Okay,
at this point
that's-
that makes
yeah.
more sense, just to give people enough time.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions or about the zoning ambassadors? All right. So this slide, we already confirmed that April 19th is the public hearing. We wanted to make sure that we had that date correct. Please help us get the word out about the forum, distribute the flyer that we sent along. Like I said, we'll be scheduling our zoning ambassador session and keeping you in the loop. And then we'll also be reaching out, and this might be a good question for the group. Should we reach out to individual like pairs? How would it be best for us to start having some of those initial conversations where we can talk offline?
Probably the thing to do is if I email you folks and Dana and the two people. And I normally copy Simone on things, or I try to.
You wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't be able to.
Right, yeah, so I wouldn't on that. But there was one group, Simone, you had said you wanted to work with Shelley and Judd on special permits, I think, because it was you.
Affordable housing.
Okay. So there'll be a different dynamic for that. So maybe you're the third wheel on that set, and I'm with the other sets.
You could just like copy me later and I could copy you later so that you're in the loop and I'm in the loop. You know what I mean? Like if we're not on their email together? No.
You cannot do that.
You can't even read what they said?
No.
No, okay.
If it would be helpful, we can do as much as we can of like summarizing things to you both as like the steering committee members. So once we have something scheduled, we can email and say, we're scheduled to meet with so-and-so on this date to talk about so-and-so. I don't know if that would be helpful, but
I mean, we can always talk about it at our meetings.
exactly, yeah.
Right.
We'll be meeting frequently enough that,
I meant,
hopefully.
yeah, even our planning board.
Yeah, planning board
meetings.
meeting. We always have on our agenda, there's always a project update.
Perfect.
So,
Okay, so yeah, if you want to go ahead and copy us so that we can start getting those scheduled, and I think those will be virtual. And we'll just kind of go pair by pair and set up time, probably our conversation to start, if that's amenable for folks. We can do evenings if daytime doesn't work. We can do, whatever works for you all. But I think that would be really good so that we can start to dig into some of these topics a little more.
no, that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
And our public hearing will just be planning board, it won't be both BOS and planning board?
The,
The 19th?
the 19th is just our regular meeting. So it's just a planning board meeting and we're holding the hearing in there. If the Board of Selectmen wants to come, they're welcome, but they need to post. So that's up to them. I think they probably have a lot on their plate. And
Just a question. I don't know if you've gotten this far, but for example, special permits that Judd and I are doing together. Are there towns that you've already looked at that are similar to ours that you could send us, or you haven't gotten that far? Or you're looking for us as well to help you with ideas of towns that we like? So I'm just wondering where we're at.
Yeah.
all of the above.
Did we do that for phase
We
one?
we don't have specific examples. What I think is the best approach to that, though, is just to tag team the effort. So we will be doing like that work on our end, but there may be certain aspects that just because of just because of proximity, you may be more familiar with certain aspects of special permits that we want to look more into. So I think just tag teaming it from both ends will give us the best result.
Because I really liked how you were showing dimensional use out of like showing Ipswich and Newton and Somerville. I thought that was really great. So I didn't know if you were that far of other towns, like for special permits that we could look at.
Yeah, I think that what we're thinking about for the process is to have that first conversation be for you to tell us what you're wanting. And that way we're not spending a lot of time looking for examples, but then we talk to you and you're like, that's not at all what we want. So I think these initial conversations, that's why we want to get them scheduled so that we can hear like, what's not working with special permits today? What are things that you want to definitely have as a special permit use? And then we can take what you kind of are mulling about and then go find examples that are fitting. I think that would be probably a more efficient way for us to go about it.
Is it part of your scope for, as these groups of two are looking at the different components, to contact you directly via email or phone call to answer simple questions like
Oh,
that?
yeah,
Okay.
totally. Yeah.
So you can have a back and forth with them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And anytime, like, you can email us and we're happy to talk about that, call us. So yeah, we're here to work with you. So we want to have this be like a back and forth so that we're doing what you all need us to do.
And even if we don't have firsthand knowledge of maybe like a best practice, we meet weekly in our department with other colleagues. So we tend to trade, stories or and ask, have you worked on this? Do you know a good case study? So we'll get recommendations that way as well.
And one of the things that there's a state American Planning Association chapter, and they've put out a resource that's been really useful. We used it in phase one of this project, but it's essentially summarizing case law. And so that's something that we'll be drawing on too, because while everything that we'll do will go through your town council before it goes to that warrant phase, we ideally want to make sure that whatever we're proposing is going to jive with whatever case law is. So we'll make sure, and as we're, doing our research, we'll look into special permit case law and make sure that whatever we're proposing is aligned with recent court decisions so that we're setting you up to not be challenged down the road.
Can you send us that link as well as you provided the other link for our bylaws?
I think that it's a members only resource, unfortunately, and it's like something that is embedded, but I can send you the APA Massachusetts. It could be something that as a planning board, you may want to like get a membership. There's also the Citizen Training Planning Collaborative. I always get the acronym wrong, but they're another resource that you all may want to tap into because they do special topics on, I think they have a whole one on special permits alone. So we're happy to send resources like that as we're sending other examples.
We'll talk about the CPTC because that's a good resource.
Yeah, I can. Any other questions or thoughts? Well, that's all we had for tonight. Again, it's really nice to be here. We're happy to be working with you all in the second phase and happy to answer questions. If you think of something after this, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
I'm sure we will have more questions as we go. It's a lot, but I think we're getting there, and we're really starting to make progress, and we're starting to see so many of, just the graphics you're showing, so many of the options that are out there, and so it's all good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
One question, when you just said graphics, is that something when you do the questions asking for feedback, to show examples, is this illustration really helpful, or do you want it written? I mean, I as an artist, I just feel visual diagrams are the best. And, but it would be good feedback if we could get that from people, how they respond, to understanding the bylaw.
I think best practice would be to have both. I think that your attorneys probably want the written, but a developer may want the picture. And so I think what we have seen is where you can try to have both the illustrative rendering and the words. So we'll try to, I think, do that as much as possible.
Thank you both for your time. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Do you have
thank
anything
you.
further? Do you have anything else?
I don't think so. I'm
I
sure.
have one more question,
Go,
sorry.
shoot.
Do you think you could recommend some readings on, just the basics of planning? I mean, it's a sort of complex activity that you're asking a volunteer board and volunteer ambassadors to, discuss, and even something that's sort of short or that you could give to the ambassadors as well.
Yeah. There are
You
a
don't
lot
have
of
to do it
top-
now.
No, I know. I'm just thinking about the way to do that without overwhelming you all, because there are a lot of topics. But I think as much as we can prime those conversations for the different topics, we'll try to maybe think of it as like, what's the background, what's the context, what are the trends that we're seeing with these different things, and also try to make sure that as we're presenting options to you, we're laying out the trade-off. So if you do start to regulate this, this could be a potential outcome of that or ramification, so that you're making an informed decision.
Yeah, that'd be great.
8:08, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, I didn't want to adjourn yet.